world-class events facility, we make your safety our #1 priority. Please give us your attention for a few minutes to take you through some important health and safety information. As the Durban ICC is a public space, please remember to keep your personal belongings safe and with you at all times. We have many bathrooms for you to use around the venue. They are clearly marked in the foyer and concourse areas. The Durban ICC is a smoke-free building, but we do have clearly marked smoking zones outside the main entrance and in the courtyard. Once outside, you will be directed to the nearest assembly point by the marshals for your safety. Please wait at the assembly point until the venue has been cleared and the marshal deems it safe for you to return to your seats. Thank you for your time and enjoy this event.
All right. Thank you very much to the Durban ICC for the briefing. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have noted that. If I can please ask our ushers to close our doors at this time and for all of us to take our seats. I'll allow our dignitaries as well in the front to take their seats, and then I'll kick off with the official program. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sanibonani. Naze nadabukisa kanti kuzoba mnandi sizo-engage sizo-energizana. Sanibonani. That's more like a warm Durban welcome. Thank you to all of our guests this afternoon who have joined us now for the official opening of the Resurgence Conference 2024, proudly hosted by the City of Durban in partnership with the Resurgence Conference conveners who have joined us from all the way around the African continent as well as all the way from the US today. My name is Ulinet Twagantuli. I am going to keep our time honest. I'm going to keep our conversations engaging, inspiring, and of course, make sure that we move from conversation to action over the next day and a half. But also, ladies and gentlemen, we will be engaging amongst ourselves. So as guests, as part of the build-up of building this wonderful concept, but also this investment platform that has come to our shores. I would be remiss, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time not to observe a protocol, and thank you very much to our dignitaries who have been seated and are at the front. But firstly, I would just like to welcome, first and foremost, His Worship the Mayor, our city manager, as well as the ECOD, our Economic Development and Planning Committee chairperson, who join us here this afternoon, the founder, as well as the co-convener of the Resurgence Conference, as well. Reverend Dylan is also with us. We are also joined this afternoon, I'm advised, by the former Vice President of Zambia, Dr. Neves Mumba, as well as our guests, many of whom you will also be meeting on stage over the next day and a half, from African Global Network. Senators from the US are also joining us, and several other thought leaders, both local and international. And of course, members of the media and you, our guests. Many of you this afternoon have also had the opportunity to walk through exhibition area and meet the business people who have their wares to showcase and to share with us as they, of course, work their way into, both the South African markets, but also the global markets that we are here to talk about integrating as part of this conference today. But before I welcome to the stage my guests to officially open this conference, as well as kick off with the first of our discussions and keynotes for our jam-packed program, please may I invite to the stage Ms. Lindiwe Mia, who will give us an opening prayer. And immediately after Ms. Mia has given us the opening prayer, please may I ask Nonzwagazi to make her way to the stage and lead us in the singing of the national anthem. Thank you.
You are Alpha and Omega. We worship you, our Lord. You are worthy to be praised. You are Alpha and Omega. We worship you, our Lord. You are worthy to be praised. Greetings in the wonderful name of Jesus. The word of the Lord says, wherever, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that I have given unto you as I unto Moses. We believe that as you have stepped into this resurgent space, you have taken over as an indigenous people of South Africa, and we thank the Lord. Let us pray. Father, we thank you in the wonderful name of Jesus. UnguNkulunkulu omuhle, unguNkulunkulu othembekile, unguJehova Sebawude umqalisi nomphelelisi wezinto zonke. Akekho omunye baba othembeke njengawe, akekho uNkulunkulu onomusa njengawe. Siphakamisa udumo kuwe sithi baba uyingcwele, 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 ukusikhumbula uyingcwele ukuthi nathi uNkulunkulu onamandla kufanele baba sisukume bese siyayithatha uNkulunkulu onamandla ibaton yokuthi uNkulunkulu onamandla sikhululwe. Nkosi yami ngokwezimali siyabonga moyo oyingcwele ukuthi wena Nkosi yami emhlabeni wena Jehova kwakunguwe Nkosi yami eqaleni namanje Nkosi yami kusanguwe moya wokuphila ongashintshi ongulizwi simemeza wena sithi you are worthy to be praised. We give you all the glory, we give you all the praise, oh God. Father, we are just raising the program unto you, oh God. We are saying, Holy Spirit, take over right now. Father, let us die so that you rise, mighty God, and let it be you that is going to be speaking this afternoon. In the name of Jesus, we give you all the praise. praise. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Thank you, Father. Thank you for your love, and thank you for your righteousness. Thank you, Father God, for manifesting justice at last for the people of South Africa. In Jesus' name, amen.
Nonswagazi, if you can lead us in the national anthem, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can please ask you to rise. No, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I was already on stage. Wait. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You may please kindly take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, Resurgence Conference, what's it all about? And what is this theme, moving the needle towards economic emancipation? Certainly, if you are South African, you've heard quite a lot about economic emancipation. But I guess the question that sits with all of us is, how do I participate in it? Who is invested in the process of economic participation and emancipation? And of course, with what we have, what we know, and where we are situated, how is it that we create our own ideas, our own innovations, and share those ideas and innovation amongst ourselves to begin the journey? It's not a perfect journey in 30 years of democracy. And I think many of you who are here in the room with me can agree with that. It hasn't been a perfect journey. We are literally building the parachute as we jump out of the plane when it comes to economic participation, equality, and even emancipation in South Africa today. But that parachute needs to be built piece by piece, component by component, by every single one of us. Not just government, but business. Small business, micro business, nano businesses included. Civic society, different institutions in our society, professionals, those who offer services. Each and every one of us is responsible for the parachute. We're responsible for the parachute because literally our lives and livelihoods depend on it, and as do future generations, the immediate futures generation, as well as those that will follow long after we leave this earth. And they will benefit the most, perhaps, from not us just conversing and sharing, but us collaborating and actually acting on what we share and innovate upon. So I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that as we gather and we take insights, we network, we also are able to begin to see areas and specific niches where we can unlock potential opportunity and even investments, both ways, by the way, between South Africa, the rest of the African continent, and I guess the rest of the global economy as well. That what I certainly hope we all walk away with is, especially after a very difficult 4 years in all the economies of the globe, we wake up and we walk out of here surged with a new energy, surged with new approaches, and surged with new ways in which we want to participate. We being every single one of us, njengoba sihleli here in this hall today at the ICC. This is a 5-day program, ladies and gentlemen, and more than 8,500 people will come in and out of the doors of the Durban ICC and will share in the various activities. Already yesterday, we had a civic reception. Earlier today, we've participated in Mandela Day out at JG Zuma School in Nanda. There is the Gospel Fest and Festival that's also coming up. The expo is on. This conference is also on, ladies and gentlemen, as are various business-to-business interactions and meetings that are taking place on the sidelines of this conference. Bake bathi-ke uzoyithola kanjani uma uhlele ekhoneni, find nawe ukuthi kulo 5 days and this packed 5-day program, which of the spaces would you like to participate in? Because the opportunity, your next business partner, your next supplier, your next customer, your next investment drive, and who to showcase to is possibly a person seated next to you, somebody who's in the next room, somebody that you'll bump into as part of these activities over this weekend. So please, ladies and gentlemen, leave surged to really participate in how we build a track towards economic emancipation. Ladies and gentlemen, each of you will have the tags that have helped you into the ICC today. Please keep those on you because they will give you access to the different areas that you need to come in and out of as part of the 5-day program. Please, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we've asked you to pose questions to participate as we engage on stage. And what I'll definitely make sure is that we have opportunity to do that. As we also move from venue to venue and between activities, as we call for people to come back into plenary or to move to different streams, if I can also just ask us to get there quickly, because we have a packed agenda, but very limited time, ladies and gentlemen. So if I can ask us just to move very quickly from venue to venue, from process and program to program, it also allows us better timing on this very program for all of us to engage, and for us up on stage, and those who've joined us from all corners of the globe, to hear your perspectives, because that is what will make this conference grow from strength to strength. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I would like to welcome, to give us an official welcome and his opening remarks as the host, City's Mayor, to the stage, Councillor Cyril Xaba, the newly minted Mayor of eThekwini Municipality. His Worship, thank you, and please a very warm round of applause to him as he comes to the stage.
Program Director, Ms. Duli Mpemba Kotite,
Thank you.
Economic Development and Planning Committee Chairperson,
Why?
Councillor Tembo Doli, our city manager, Mr. Musambele, founder and convener of the Resurgence Conference, Reverend Dennis Dillon, African Global Networks Chairperson, Mr. Wiseman Mkunu, His Excellency, Dr. Nevers Mumba, ex-Vice President of Zambia. We will be joined by a New York State Senator, Mr. James Sanders Jr. He's on his way. World Economic Congress President, Dr. Alexander Chisango, Black Lives Matter co-creator, Ayo Dometi, Ms. Carol Bauer, businesswomen and humanitarian, business sector, civil society, visiting delegates, partners, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Sanibonani. This morning, the delegation took its time out to visit Uhlange in Inanda. For its significance to the struggle for social justice in our country. It was an intense program. There they observed their 67 minutes to mark what has come to be known as the Nelson Mandela International Day, as declared by the United Nations. We felt honored by that visit. Then the report I got is that they adopted 67 students who will be mentored, supported, and funded in the various fields. It is a distinct honor for me to officially open this 2024 Resurgence Conference, which seeks to enhance economic opportunities for African people in this continent and diaspora. What makes this event even more significant is that it coincides with the Nelson Mandela International Day. This is an occasion where we pause and reflect on the contribution this struggle icon made in the liberation struggle of Black people in general and Africans in particular. Reverend Dennis Dillon, you remember, sir, that soon after his release from prison in 1990, President Nelson Mandela embarked on a freedom tour to the United States, and his first stop was New York City. We have no doubt that Madiba's spirit is with us today, rejoicing that his dream of uniting the African people in the continent and in diaspora is being realized. We want to emphasize that while this conference is taking place in Durban, its scope extends to other African cities. Hence, we have in our midst delegates from Zambia, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Kenya, and Cameroon. As the leadership of the city, we want to thank everyone who has worked tirelessly to organize this inaugural conference. Our gratitude also goes to our partners from both cities, Durban and the New York City. The collaboration we have forged in organizing this crucial conference has laid a solid foundation for us to work together for the betterment of our people. In fact, we are building on the work that was pioneered by our Struggle for Bears, the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Thomas Sankara, our own Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Nelson Mandela. These leaders led the struggle for our political freedom, and with this conference, we are picking up the baton and continuing to build a united and economically integrated continent. As a port city, we strongly believe that Durban is better positioned to assist the continent to realize the vision of integrating its people and the economy. We're encouraged by the latest Business Confidence Index that has been released by the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which indicates that the business confidence in Durban has significantly improved. This can be attributed to the hard work we are doing to create a conducive environment for investment in the city. As you will be exploring investment opportunities in various sectors of the economy, we are pleased to share with you that a great deal of work is being done to facilitate the ease of doing business in the city of Durban. Our goal is to reduce red tape and short-circuit turnaround times to process development applications. We are acutely aware that for us to continue to be the premier investment destination, we need to deliver quality services both to our residents and businesses. It is for this reason that we are investing close to 3 billion rand per annum to upgrade our water and sanitation infrastructure. This will go a long way in ensuring that we have reliable water supply. To improve energy security, the municipality is upgrading the existing electricity infrastructure. Plans are also at an advanced stage to procure renewable energy from independent power producers. This program will attract billions of private investments into the city and create about 8,000 sustainable jobs. It is through this investment in infrastructure that we have seen the city attracting new investment in key economic sectors such as construction, manufacturing, wholesale and retail, hospitality, transport and logistics. Major brands based in the city such as Toyota, Sapi, Syco, and SAB, South African breweries, and are also expanding their investment in the city. Ladies and gentlemen, tourism continues to be a catalyst for economic growth in the city. We are pleased that this sector is returning to pre-COVID growth levels. This could be attributed to the investment government continues to make in tourism infrastructure. For instance, the city recently launched the state-of-the-art Nelson Mandela Cruise Terminal, and as a result, we have now become the preferred destination for luxurious cruise vessels. Just after COVID-19, we relaunched international flight routes between Durban and Harare, Istanbul and Lusaka. We have also witnessed the return of internationally acclaimed carriers such as Qatar and Emirates Airlines to our King Shaka International Airport. In an effort to provide memorable tourism experience for visitors, we're increasing our tourism routes to encompass green tourism products. We are also expanding our historical routes to include townships such as Claremont, where I come from, Umkumbani, and Chesterville, to diversify our tourism products. We are making every effort to remain the preferred destinations, to remain the preferred destination for major events. This creates a platform for our artists to showcase their talents and, most importantly, to grow the creative industry. You will witness this during the Resurgence Gospel Fest on Saturday, where our local artists will be sharing the stage with internationally acclaimed artists such as Shirley Caesar. We are confident that the partnerships we have formed will create more platforms for artists in our city. Program Director, we want to emphasize that this is an investment conference in the true sense of the word. Few hours ago, we opened an exhibition where over 120 exhibitors, but the number has gone up to over 150, ranging from the creative arts, manufacturing, and ICT are showcasing their products. We encourage you to network, build relationships, and explore new business opportunities. As the leadership of the city, we are indeed excited by the prospects. I want to emphasize this. We are indeed excited by the prospects of this conference, as it demonstrates that as Africans in the continent and diaspora, we are beginning to take charge of our destiny and development. We have no doubt that you'll enjoy your stay in our warm and beautiful cities. We'll have time to look to our must-see sites, tourism offerings, our beach fronts, beautiful mountains, and you'll find all of that exciting. You'll also have the opportunity to buy some souvenirs and spend your dollars so that you will not have to, be burdened carrying those dollars back home when in fact we need them here. Our organizing team has worked flat out and have put all measures in place to ensure that you have a fruitful and memorable Resurgence Conference in Durban. I thank you. You are all welcomed.
Count all your blessings, my mother says.
Thank you very much to His Worship, the Mayor, Councillor Klava, for his words of welcome. And I think for emphasizing the support, but also what he hopes to be the fruitful outcomes of why we are gathered here today. Which immediately takes me to my next point, which is, well, why are we gathered here today? And what is this Resurgence Conference about? And let's now unpack this detail that's gone into all of this work to bringing these dollars that shouldn't burden anybody on their way home, but also making sure that we are able to sow strong relationships and sow economic opportunity and green shoots that are going to ensure that these fruitful outcomes are indeed achieved. To help me answer these big questions this afternoon, I would like to bring to the stage the City Manager of eThekwini Municipality, Mr. Musambele. Ngiyantshela bafethu abantu bakantuli baniphethe this year kantulo mbhelo godito sompisi. We are leadership material. And with him, I'd like to welcome Reverend Dennis Dillon, who is the co-convener of the Resurgence Conference and is joining us today from the United States. Please give them a very warm round of applause as they make their way to the stage. Good afternoon and welcome, gentlemen. If I can please invite you both to please take the hot seats in the center. In the center, please, in the hot seats in the center. And thank you very much for joining me both as we set the scene as to why we are here and what it is that we hope to achieve as part of this conference. Perhaps let me start with yourself, Reverend Dillon, and ask you, what is the main objective of the Resurgence Conference? And why was it crucial to found it back at home? And why is it crucial now to take it to a global business community such as us right here in Africa today?
Not a very difficult question to answer. Let me say good afternoon to everyone, and let me salute you, Madam Program Director. I think what is key and critical for us as an African people, whether we are in these lands, this beautiful country of South Africa. We're talking about the continent of Africa or around the world. It is the fact that at one point, Africans and black people were the wealthiest people on the planet. We've lost our economic power, and we could probably talk about a lot of reasons why. The whole concept behind the resurgence movement is for there to be a resurge, for us to begin to turn things back in the right direction so we're moving the needle forward. We can no longer sit back and allow South Africa, again, is such a perfect example. The per capita GDP for whites in South Africa is 2.4 million rands. And I need everybody to hear this, so I'm gonna say it one more time. Approximately 2.4 million rands per capita GDP for whites in South Africa. For blacks in South Africa, it is 68,000 rands. Now, the New York Times has already reported that that represents the widest gap and the greatest degree of economic disparity anywhere in the world. So obviously a part of this commitment is how do we turn that around, and very importantly, how do we begin to change the employment circumstances as well. Again, white unemployment, 6% South Africa, black unemployment, 41% South Africa.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mbele, city manager and the host, really the city to host this very important conversation, but I think that also hosting this very important conversion of fortunes and in this resurgence. Can you just tell us about what the aims of this economic collaboration are going to deliver for the African continent, for our country as well as our city, with the partnership that we are forming with those who are based in the United States? Certainly, I know Durban participates in the Sister Cities program right the way around the world, and we'll hear a little bit more about those collaborations as well. But I'd really love for you to unpack for us, what is it that the local economy from this global context will be able to draw, and what this collaboration can deliver for us all?
Good afternoon, Lynette Mdagasompis. Greetings to the people here, a number of people who are part of this conference, and greetings to Reverend Dilwan. Before I respond to that question, let me start off by highlighting maybe a little bit what the Resurgence Conference is not about. Okay? It's important that we manage the narrative. Resurgence Conference is not a religious church gathering. Okay? However, it is founded on the good principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like anybody is allowed to belong to any religious grouping, the people who are behind the concept of resurgence are the people who believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ, but this is not a church gathering. I felt that is important to clarify it. The second part that I wanted to clarify is that resurgence is not an apartheid in reverse. It's not a movement that seeks to undermine other racial groups. It's a movement that seeks to raise awareness about the plight of African people in the mother continent and in the diaspora insofar as economic emancipation and development is concerned. I think those 2 points are very critical, Lynette, right from the beginning.
Thank you.
But let's come to what the benefits are going to be. There are going to be a lot of benefits. Those benefits have already started. I think the mayor has highlighted the fact that in Inanda we have had 67 learners that are going to be trained, that are going to be brought under the tutelage of the very influential business people in the United States so that they grow to become better business people so that they are also going to be able to come back and plow back home those skills and those opportunities that they will have been exposed to. Immediately there's a direct impact. It's not something that may happen in the future. But more importantly, we've got a diverse array of enterprises that are represented here that operate in the United States. The first part is to create those functional economic linkages between our businesses here and businesses in the United States. I think you have spoken about the sister city arrangements that we have. We have the sister city arrangement with the city of Los Angeles and so on. So we want to say, at a project level, what is Ms. Nduli going to do to get her businesses to be exposed to the market in the United States? That's the first benefit.
Okay.
The second one, we've got people who are keen to come and invest in Durban. However, as they invest, they are very much aware about the need to ensure that they deal with the inequalities, but they want their products to be exposed to the market in Durban as the entry point to the African continent. So it is not only about the Durban business people that are going to benefit, it's also about people that are going to benefit in the continent. We've got representatives from Kenya, we've got representatives from Uganda and other parts of Africa. We are saying Durban becomes that nerve center through which this revival goes and covers the entirety of the African continent. The skills development, capacity building across various sectors, which also include property development sector, as I've said, creative industry, film, medical sector, issues of agriculture, and so on and so forth.
Well, that was actually my next question that I was going to touch on, City Manager, as well as to you, Reverend Dylan, that, you know, we've got 5 days, but in 5 days, which are the key sectors? And of course, like you've already used that word there, the nerve centers, that we're going to focus on at this initial engagement as for the Resurgence Conference. You started to touch on that, but perhaps, Reverend Dylan, I don't know if from, you know, as a partner who's coming in from the US, in the key sectors that have already been touched on by the city manager, if you would like to expand or add some of the interests that you also arrive with here today.
Yeah, so I would speak to a couple of areas. I think one certainly is tourism. And how do we strengthen that? For a couple of reasons. Obviously, Durban is a resort city that obviously is not functioning at its full potential for what of the reasons are. So if we're able to, again, create scenarios that will drive more, particularly Black Americans, who, by the way, in the United States are at the top of the list as it relates to leisure travel. So if we can increase that, how do we increase that? I think number one, how do we create more development along the Durban waterfront, and how do we engage developers on the US side, particularly Black developers who can come and participate in development, create more hotels, create more timeshares, create more hospitality businesses. We have one of the hospitality geniuses and leaders that has already opened over 4 5-star restaurants in the New York area. That's a part of this delegation. How do we expand that? Again, how do we create more franchise businesses and operations? And certainly, I believe that there is so much more room for us to strengthen what I call the collaboration between the manufacturing sector right here in Durban with retail on the US side of the equation. At the end of the day, I walk through the exhibit area, and by the way, everybody ought to walk through. I've already, I suffered to some degree from a disease I coined while teaching at Columbia University many years ago called compulsive shopping disorder. I have a little bit of that problem, I must confess. So I was probably one of the first to actually make a purchase in the exhibit hall. But I make the point because I saw these beautiful shoes. I love fancy red bottom shoes. I saw some fancy red bottom shoes next door. Guess where they're made? In Durban, South Africa. I saw shirts. Guess where they're made? In KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. So at the end of the day, how do we get more marketers on the American side to be working in relationship with manufacturers on the South African side? So at the end of the day, black people in America and in the Caribbean, we can go to the grocery stores and we're buying product made in South Africa. We can go to the department stores and we're buying product made in South Africa. I am tired that every time I got to go to the stores in America, I'm buying product made in Japan, I'm buying stuff that's made in Israel, I'm buying stuff that is made in Korea, stuff made in China. I'm not buying anything that's made in Africa. That's a part of what we obviously have to change in this particular scenario.
Thank you very much for that. And I think, you've already now touched on the drivers of what real economic emancipation is. The ability to not just consume, but produce. The ability, to not facilitate between different markets and have volatile markets, but also to create security and stability within creating those markets and hubs that then develop and grow. Between the both of you, past the exhibitors, the different products, the black belts in shopping that you have introduced us to. Who else?
And by the way, I must say that compulsive shopping disorder is not a good thing.
It's a beautiful thing for our city, however. But between the two of you, we've got business people predominantly in the room who are interested. We have yourselves as the conveners. We have the city of Durban as almost the enabling and host environment to bring us together. Which other stakeholders do you intend to now strengthen these collaborations with to continue to help us with unlocking a lot of the mechanisms that I think both of you have touched on, which are going to ensure continued economic activity, continued trade, and of course this flow of investment, of crucial development, talents and skills that you've also touched on, and this conversation that we need about boosting and elevating each other's stature, brands, and standing within the global arena.
Yeah, if I may start. This program can only succeed as far as the government can become involved. So this is premised on taking the baton and run with it from the good work that our government in both countries have actually done. Our government has developed very good policies and programs on black economic empowerment, on broad-based economic empowerment, and what have you. What we are seeking to do is to give impetus to those policies and programs so that the impact is felt by those who mostly need it. We are also acutely aware of the fact that those who hold financial power also have to be part of supporting this program for a number of reasons, for growing their own enterprises, making a sound and powerful bottom line, but also as a good social cohesion project. Durban comes out of a very terrible history of social uprising, and this is an attempt to reverse that. To basically say that if we don't do something about these things, we may face a problem in the future. So we are saying the government structures, the Department of Trade and Industry, small businesses, our own business support, various entities of government, your CEDA, and all the policies are very much part of what we are doing here. And they have to join in ensuring that this works. The banking sector, they've shown interest. We've got representatives from the 4 banks who are also part of the session here. Lynette, when we went to the United States to show that this is a noble cause, it's not an unguided revolutionary movement. It's a noble cause that is supported even by the corporate world. Goldman Sachs, the biggest financial institution in the world, invested $10 billion supporting 1 million African female-owned businesses in the United States, and they've spent 100 million rands on philanthropic work. So it's everybody trying to correct these inequalities, and all those sectors need to be activated to make this a success.
Thank you very much for that response. Reverend Dillon, would you like to add a point?
Yeah, absolutely. If first, I just really want to salute our city manager for his leadership and vision. Let's put our hands together for him. And I really want to really commend and congratulate, salute our honorable mayor for the city of Durban. And I want to, to that point, talk about, as you talk about what other sector, how strategically important government is. And I don't know that most business people understand the critical role that government play and ought to play. When we talk about public-private partnerships and how do we facilitate more of these kinds of initiatives, it is certainly what the city of Durban is doing, and we certainly need to do a whole lot more of that. Yeah. We've brought a couple of government leaders with us, the Honorable Laura Hall, who is not only a stellar political leader that is from Alabama in the United States, she's also the president of the National Black Caucus of state legislators that's in the House with us today. In addition to her, we also have, and we apologize for his delay, his suitcase got left in Johannesburg, so that's why Senator James Saunders is not here yet, but he chairs the banking committee for the state Senate. I say that to say that in New York State alone, which, by the way, both at the city level, the largest city, New York City, and the state level, the largest percentage of employees happens to be black people. Now, black people in just New York State alone and New York City alone, when we look at the pension fund at the city level and the pension fund at the state level, we're talking about almost $1 trillion. Now, that money is invested all over the world. Sadly, hardly any of it is invested in Africa. And we're saying if it's black people that are the employees, then it's mostly our pension fund. And why is our pension fund not invested in Africa? And that's why we're here, to make sure that we're moving the needle forward in these directions.
And thank you so much for raising that point about foreign direct investment, and in fact, just global flows of investment vested in different interests and different markets. And I think that's going to be a huge driver of a lot of the conversation. Because particularly, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who follow the economic journals, who follow the economic news, you've definitely seen how in the last 5 years, and this was just before the pandemic, we suddenly, because of various geopolitical situations and various market-related factors, we saw perhaps the heaviest fall and tumble of foreign direct investment interest in the African continent, except, of course, to, I think, the major 2 nodes where it's remained fairly consistent, if it has not grown, because of their investment in digital infrastructure, being Kenya and Nigeria. But everybody else is not, over the last 5 years, where they should be, is not tapping into the potential that they should be tapping into. And of course, they don't seem to be drivers of that collaboration and conversation that says, how do we make the distribution of these resources equitable. So I certainly hope that as part of our conversation, we will continue driving cohesion, the equitable share of resources. But I think most importantly for everybody who's seated with us here in the room is the deep question of, we hear the trillions, we hear the GDP numbers and the conversions, we hear these big economic markers, but how do I change my circumstances, my family's circumstances, my community's circumstances, my country's circumstances through the activity I participate in, from a business, from a manufacturing, from a trade, and even a professional perspective, because I know there's quite a number of professionals who are also joining us in the room from various sectors as well, who are the partners that we need to take this vehicle forward. Ladies and gentlemen, do you seated out there this afternoon have a good sense of why we are here? Okay. Do you have a good sense of what we are here to do and achieve? Are you feeling good about it? Or are you feeling like you're getting ready to throw empty water bottles at myself, the city manager, and Reverend Dylan? Okay, so no uprisings in Durban, resurgence in Durban, and resurgence for the economic growth of this beautiful city that we all love so much. To Reverend Dylan and to the city manager, I know I'm going to have you back up here again tomorrow afternoon as you give us a summary of everything you would have heard and listened to and the questions the audience would have driven and the conversations. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if by this time tomorrow afternoon, the three of us are going to be agreed that we've met our objectives, we're well on the road, and we've drawn a roadmap for the objectives as well as the collaborations. And of course, the economic activity you both want to see happening between everyone in this room, everyone outside this room, and everybody right the way around the world who can be a cohesive partner to what it is that we're here to do today. Ladies and gentlemen, please give these two gentlemen a warm round of applause. And like I said, tomorrow I'll be making sure that they've done their homework and they come back and they deliver a roadmap to us that takes us into a future, from talk into action. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You may leave the stage. Now, this conversation about what and why, I'm excited because it has immediately unlocked the gates for the next discussion that we're about to have. Because as you read into the words we used, a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnership needs to happen. A lot of information sharing and beneficiation needs to happen between so many various parties. But ladies and gentlemen, these structures that we are speaking of, these world economies, these financial systems that we live within, are structural and systemic environments that we've been born into, we're finding here, and we're now needing to find different ways to live around them, to work within the context of their existence. But very rarely do we have the opportunity to bend the rules, to innovate on the rules. Sometimes, from time to time, different nations, different individuals and nations will break the rules, with or without consequence. But here's our opportunity here, ladies and gentlemen, to have a conversation with all these multiple parties about how we integrate, how we innovate through these systemic and structural challenges, threats even, volatilities, structures that existed long before we do, and find a way through dismantling and reorganizing to resurge into a new future. So with that, and the people and the business people now, and the drivers of capital and flows, and these type of conversations who are going to join me on stage now, we're going to try to really unpack what it means, to provide equitable integration through innovation. And they're going to even share some of the ways in which they've done it themselves. I'd like to bring to the stage a very well-known South African personality, but past the personality is that she is a formidable businesswoman as well, who does so much, not just where she is now homed and based, but for the African continent, and in terms of how she promotes business, the arts, culture, the brand that is South Africa to those that she meets. Miss Carol Bauer, if she can please make her way to the stage to join me. Senator James Sanders, have you been able to join us this afternoon? Not yet? He's on his way, so when he arrives, he can, pardon? About 10 minutes? Okay, we'll start the conversation and he'll be able to jump on stage and I'll make sure that I see him. And then can I also welcome to the stage Mr. Alexandra Chisango, who comes from the World Economic Congress for Africa Growth, based in our neighbor nation, Zimbabwe. Welcome. How are you? Take a seat. Please, can you take this seat? Welcome, Alex. Thank you. Take a seat, sir. We'll leave the end seat open for the senator so that he may join us when he comes into the room. A very warm welcome to the both of you. Welcome to my city, Durban. I love to call it my city, Durban. I think you've heard the what, you've heard the why. Now we've got to glue it together. And you're here on stage as participants in not just South African or should I call it trade within the SADC, but you're also people who converse in trade, who participate in trade right the way around the continent, but also all over the globe. One of the things that we certainly all can appreciate as we sit here today is that 54 nations are housed and homed in Africa today. And wow, ladies and gentlemen, past the problems, we are perhaps the luckiest when it comes to our natural, our mineral, our heritage, our cultural, our economic, and even our human assets and potential. The only problem seems to be, how do we tap into that? How do we create better mobility? And how, of course, do we move from policy into practice? When I think of our own country, I think of America and the United States of America, and I just think about just the volumes of research and white papers and acts that come out of our governments and all the different institutions related to trade. But how that and how little of that actually translates to the man in the street and into practice. I'm saddened by it, because it says we've got all this information and knowledge at our disposal, but nobody is ever going to experience that education. And so what is the good of having it? So let me start out with the questions. I wanted actually to start with the senator this afternoon, but you know, he's going to make his way in, and of course I wanted to start out by really discussing the relationship and the economic relationship between South Africa, Africa, and the US. Because I think as we sit here today, that is a central nerve question to what it is that we are also here today. Many of you would have heard of AGOA, you would have heard of the various treaties, you know, and the trade agreements in particular that are at play with the African continent and so many others. But the axis of that relationship also defines what we can do in terms of integration and innovation. But we're going to continue with my next question. And I really want to talk about, we have this global context, but we need to localize it, right? And it's very difficult sometimes for us to take big global mechanics, should I call them, and implement them into our local context and economies. And there are just so many barriers then to entry and bureaucracy that begin to step in the way of opportunity. I would love for the both of you just to perhaps firstly give us some opening remarks about what integration and innovation means for creating an equitable table, but also within the context of the point around globalization to localization. Your thoughts really in terms of these barriers, these threats, and how it is, of course, we could be unlocking them, positioning them differently so that we can open the gates to opportunity. And Carol, perhaps let me start with yourself, ladies first. Mr. Chisambo.
Lynette, thank you so much, and what a pleasure to be a part of this inaugural conference in Durban. You were claiming that you're inviting us to your home. I'd like to claim it as half mine because I went to school here.
Yeah.
However, I think that that's a critical question because we know that we know how to legislate. We know that Africa knows how to come up with the best, whether it's a white paper on, just even in business, agriculture, you name it. Where we fall short, I think it's the implementation. It's the fact that we joke about how Africans will consult until such time that the business is gone. There's no opportunity to even implement that which you've consulted about. And what I love about Europeans is that they're out the gate, they make the mistake, they come back and they say, oops, well, we're not supposed to do that. And I think we've come to a time as Africans where we have to begin to be totally unapologetic about exploring the opportunities that we know are on the table because we all read about them. We all pick up a newspaper and we know that there's AGOA. Who's accessing it? Who is it helping? Why am I not able to give effect to it? We all want to transact with some of the biggest nations in the world. We all want to be transacting with the dollar, even if there's arguments about, the de-dollarization of economies. We want whatever is strongest in order to be able to come back and be able to create more jobs,
Yes.
but also to go look after more of our people. So my concern when it comes to why we're not able to give effect to the things that we are already all conversant about, it is the fact that our humility is also holding us back as Africans. We are so humble about doing that which we're good about. So I am in the manufacturing sector.
Yes.
And the work that we do in the manufacturing sector, I've had to innovate in terms of how I transact with countries that may not be aware of how proficient and how excellent South Africa is in the luxury manufacturing sector. So we make bags,
Yes.
and these bags come off the conveyor belt with some of the biggest names in the world. So the first time I started this, it was around 2010, there was excitement about the World Cup coming to South Africa, and I wanted to carry a bag with my name on it. I did not want to be carrying, I'll just say Louis Vuitton, because I don't want to be advertising anyone else. And I remember getting on that flight, I was on my way to Amsterdam at the end of the World Cup, and somebody asked me where this was manufactured. Perhaps this is a good time for me to have a
I was
plug.
about to say, we need a bag. We need a bag.
Here to get the bag.
Yes.
But honestly, people could not believe that this had been manufactured in South Africa. And I say this to remind you that we have been a manufacturing hub for the longest of time. We are not trying to learn this. This is a skill that we're excellent at. I'm going to share with you something that may surprise you. And that is the fact that one of the most loved brands in the world, one of the most respected brands in the world, Hermes, sources in South Africa.
Yes.
Oh, I love you, Lynette. Don't you just love her? Let's advertise, let's sell bags. And perfume, by the way. So people don't know that by the time we choose our ostrich skin coming out of Oudtshoorn in South Africa, Hermes has been the first because they signed a bilateral that allowed us to grow that economy of ensuring that we have farms that are doing the ostrich farming responsibly and in compliance with the UN conventions, which is the CITES Convention, and that is the Convention on Endangered Species and the trade thereof. And I think what is really exciting for me is the fact that that tells me that the world knows that South Africa is providing the best in the luxury space. Secondly, the factory at which my bags are made, Prada was coming off the conveyor belt until 2017. We all buy Prada, right? What's written inside it? Made in Italy. Sometimes made in France. I will tell you that a lot of the times it is assembled in South Africa and then one element of it is done in Europe and then it's called made in whatever nation that is. It is time that as South Africans we begin to proudly carry made in South Africa.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that to say, go buy Carol Bauer bags. What I'm saying about that is whatever it is you're making here, it's time we put the stamp South Africa inside it.
Yes.
When you open it, it is time that you know its origin because that is how we're going to fix our economies. That is how we're going to show the world our capacity. The other thing that I think, I don't want to take out too much time, so you let me know if I still have time, but I wanted to talk about the different things that we can do in order to ensure that the world understands what innovation is going to mean in terms of our pockets in Africa. I'll pause there.
Thank you for pausing there because that's definitely my fourth question to yourself. Mr. Chisango, the World Economic Congress's thoughts on localization. Carol's just given us a fantastic example of, just the discrepancies between policy and practice, the threats to our own markets, but also how humility, which is supposed to be one of the most noble of attributes of a human being, is also the thing that's locking us out of the gates of getting our bag. They get our ostriches first. I can't believe it. Mr. Chisango, share with me your thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you. I want to salute and appreciate our mutual hosts of the Resurgence Conference, more particularly for their choice also of the venue right here in Africa. I'm aware that last time it was in New York City, the US. That allows a lot of African citizens to make their way and to attend. And we need to really applaud your commitment for doing that. Thank you very much. And also great regards to His Worship the Mayor and his leadership and executive. And thank you so much for the question. You see, to deal with the issue on the table, the issue of mainstreaming of African trade into the global village. Now, we need to think architecturally before we throw up facts and so on around the table. If you come into a river and then you say there is a race that must be done in the river, then you've got frogs, then you've got crabs, then you've got the crocodiles. Then you blow your whistle and you say, let's run. The verdict is known before the race is run. So we are having an unequal economic architecture, which even the United Nations has not been able to solve up to now. But again, how then do you deal with it? We're living also in a world where sympathy alone and charity will never take any group of people or any nation to their destiny. So I want to say there are structural issues that we just have got to face head on. In 1884, when Africa was partitioned into small little 54 things that we call countries today, the intention was to prevent industrialization. The other intention was also to prevent global competitiveness.
Yeah.
The other intention was also to prevent Africans from organizing themselves. Because for me to organize myself with His Worship the Mayor, I'm fortunate to be coming from Zimbabwe because I don't need a visa
Yes.
to come here. But if I'm coming from Cameroon,
Oh,
if I'm coming from another
Benin,
part in
if
West
you're
Africa,
coming from, yeah,
we can't even organize ourselves
yeah,
directly. That's issue of structure.
yeah.
But before we come to structure, to fix the structure, which can then allow us to fix the trade and infrastructure, we must address two fundamental issues. The issue of our identity, which is our texture. Number two, the issue of our stature. The issue of whether do we really want to be taken seriously on the global stage. Because any group of people that today gets taken seriously on the global stage, they just went and organized themselves without asking for permission from anyone.
Yeah.
And they organized themselves. That's what the Japanese did. That's what the Chinese did. Some few decades ago, public toilets were written in Europe, Western Europe, to say Africans, Chinese, and dogs are not welcome in some public toilets. But the Chinese were then removed from those notice boards. And then the Africans were only later removed by virtue of a human rights outcry. So we don't have to wait to be permitted. We must organize ourselves, but that also involves dealing with the structure which disorganized us, because that structure is here. It's not just global, but it was left here. That includes the structure of education and media. Education, I think what we need to do in Africa is there are certain subjects in the school curriculum that must not be left to national governments to design. They must be continental subjects
Yeah.
that standardize our identity and standardize our state.
Absolutely.
Then, because if you leave certain strategic issues at the mercy of national governments to define them, you are leaving these things to anonymous chance because you don't even know who is going to be in government, who is going to be Minister of Education, where did they go to school, what were they taught, by who, and to achieve what.
Sure.
And a lot of them were not trained by Africa for Africans.
Thank you.
They were trained elsewhere.
Swear.
I'll ask you a very simple question. We clap hands each time there is an announcement of a scholarship fund because we are exporting young people to go and learn all over the world. Have you ever seen Chinese people sending their kids on scholarship to study in African schools? Yeah. You see, never see that.
True. True.
Neither do you see in America or Western Europe people clapping hands, cutting some ribbon of issuing a scholarship fund to come and learn in Africa. Because education is a strategic gate which you cannot leave to chance about who is going to educate your future leaders.
True.
And you expect to establish equitable and competitive global trade and global integration
Sure.
and participation. So let me put a comma there. We have much to say furthermore.
We have so much to say. And I think, you know, it sort of touched on one of the questions that I had, that how we're taking everybody with, and I think you've opened the gate to that. Carol, you came onto stage with a list, and a list that says, Lynette, here's how I see us moving from this policy to this practice, and this is what we need to innovate on. I love Alexandra's point to us today that we're unfortunately or fortunately born into structures and the architecture, and then we have to navigate our way around it. But I think the type of innovation and creating fit for purpose market initiatives as a continent we need to take going forward are actually going to force us to leave the mold. Innovation for us at this point is leaving the mold and going to create our own branding and our own positioning strategies and almost our own cultural statements and identities that say to anybody who meets us, I am an African and this is how I define myself and this is what I'm here to do. Now, translating the same marketing, the same branding, the same identity economics that we now need to participate in into trade. If I'm seated here today and this has now clicked an idea about something I could be doing differently, just something as simple as tag what I'm wearing with made in South Africa, right? What else could we be doing?
I mean, this is so exciting. For me, the Honorable Minister brings into question also the organization of our continent.
Yes.
The fact that we have an AU that is our leadership, and we are still talking about this, we're still talking about the standardization of our education, and I know that what some of us are thinking as we listen to the Minister is, but how would this work when we can't even at a municipal level agree on who we want leading us? At a country level, at a province level, at this level, we can't agree. So you have to take these little nuances that take into account, you know, how each country sees itself, sort of organize itself within education and then feed into the broader continental structure.
Yes.
It'll be very difficult for us here in South Africa to try and legislate for Egypt, for instance, because we are still at a point where we're still trying to define whether or not each part of this continent, each part of the 54 countries actually sees itself as African. So before we get to arguments about our unity, let's find each other at the organizations we've already set up. We already have structures that do this. One of the things that really concerns me, before we think about working with Germany, before we think about working with the US, what is the reason so many of our nations have not ratified the AFCFTA? Here is a model that we've all agreed on. We've all pushed and said that we want to get to a point where we realize that we are a captive a market that can trade with one another and ensure that we're growing our economies, we're assisting our economies, we are making sure that our coffee comes from, whether it's Kenya or Tanzania, our meat comes from, but we are not ratifying these amazing tenets that we've set. And until such time that we stick to what we speak, that we sign these agreements and we give effect to them by making sure that our communities are able to tap into them because our leadership has ratified them, we will not get to the kind of Africa that we all want, which is what our good leader here espouses. And I think organizations such as the Africa Global Network, I think I'll pause there quickly before I continue.
Good afternoon, Senator. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, to Senator James Sanders. We had indicated earlier that his luggage had been left behind, but we see him suited up and ready, and he's here, so we're thankful for that. And welcome to a very hot discussion about the integration and the innovation that we need to create an equitable economic future for the African continent within this global context. But I'm going to pose my very first question back to you once Carol continues and has finished her point.
I am almost done. Getting carried away about African trade before we begin to speak about trading with the senator. But what I really wanted to say is forums such as this, and I want to commend our city manager, who has gallantly gone and said, we want to see our people trade with the world. I mean, I've been following on social media, and it's energizing to see that you have championed this ship in order to make sure that we come at today. Reverend Delon as well, I think it's wonderful what you have started, and that you haven't been selfish, and you've allowed us as Africans to be a part of this and walk the surge with you. I think more forums that are Africa-led, that are Afrocentric in welcoming the world to come and see and imbibe information from also our perspective. We get excited when people are going to the UN. We get excited when people are going to Davos. What are we doing to make sure that these thought leadership platforms are actually here at home as well? We've always been thought leaders. People talk about how, you go to Egypt, those pyramids didn't build themselves. So clearly we are a center of innovation. Go back to the Mali scripts and read about who we are as a people, and then begin to invite people to understand Africa from Africa's perspective. I commend you for this platform. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Let us have more of this, not less. Let us hear Africans and how they want to transact with the world, rather than coming with a begging bowl all the time. Senator, welcome. Thank you for...
All right. One of the most stressful times of the year for me, when I look at the continent and what we're doing about innovation, moving into practice, the African, the trade agreements as well as implemented. One of the most stressful times of the year for me is when the summer meetings swing around at the UN, those General Assembly meetings, and they take that big picture with all of our African presidents whose average age on that stage is 78. From a continent with an average age of 19. Their average age is 78. We have incontinent 95-year-olds holding on to second generations of power, right? And also suffocating, quite literally suffocating, the future of the average age 19-year-old at home. For what? A question they can't answer. We're not saying that age does not come with wisdom and knowledge. Age should not be revered and respected. But there comes a point when age must move on and allow the future to happen. And, to the points around education, that is us allowing a future to happen. I happen today, to have come in with my little brother, and I know this is a conversation we have at our dining room table all the time, around that education cannot be built on 5-year legacies because there is structures bigger than that. And therefore, it's time for us as part of the branding and the architecture to start separating the knowledge economy, but also the things that will carry us forward. And then, of course, deal with our branding and our identity politics and who we want to be architecturally and structurally in a new world order that comes with it. Senator, straight into the hot questions. The economic relationship between South Africa and the rest of the African continent, as well as the United States of America. Dozens of treaties signed, many agreements in action at play at this point in time, many of them geared primarily for the beneficiation and the positive outcomes for the US. Resurgence for us today is about equity, it's about cohesion, and how do we create a turnaround in the fortunes of the African continent, but also are able to share between nations, within this global context, what we're made of and you're able to share what you've made of with the African continent and the diaspora as a whole. What is the type of innovation and practice you, as almost the signatories, the lawmakers, the policy drivers from the US, would like to see better even out the scales in terms of how these treaties fall into practice between our nations? We know and understand you have your vested interests, but shared interest is the direction in which the world needs to go now. Give us your take on that.
Good evening, good afternoon. It is good to be here. I, of course, want to thank the mayor and the city manager for their incredible vision that has allowed us to come together. The Surge and its proponents, Pastor Dillon, quickly comes to mind, and others. I am Senator James Sanders Jr. I am chair of banking in New York State. And let me start a long-winded answer to your question. Let me start with a story, which is our tradition, of course. At the end, this is a true story, at the end of the Soviet Union, at the fall of the Soviet Union, there were workers at a steel mill, and Japanese workers came to see them. Now, the Soviet workers did not get out much because of the system that they had. So they went to the Japanese and they said to them, "Comrades, we know that we are behind. How far behind are we?" The Japanese looked to themselves and laughed and said to them, "You are behind forever." You are behind forever. Our situation is so precarious that we need to take it seriously and do everything that we can so that another 2 or 3 generations are not behind forever.
Yeah.
This is a day and age where the paradigm has changed. The whole thing that we thought we knew has changed. You have AI, you have cryptocurrency, you have a lot of different challenges that we have to deal with. We have to think anew. So, to the people of Durban, I would suggest to you that you use what you have. You use what is in your hands. One of the things that you have is that you sit at a great center of trade. Now that the Middle East is in flames and they can't go through the Red Sea, they have to go, shipping must go around the Horn of Africa again, which means that Durban, of course, is at a key place, has always been. But that's not enough. Durban must consider South-South trade. What do I mean by this? I take the position of the African. I consider myself an African American. I am an African who has an American experience. Thank you. I view you as continental Africans, Africans who have a continental experience. We are cousins. We need to act in such a fashion. The largest African population outside of Africa is in Brazil.
Yeah.
120 million Africans. The second largest African population is in the United States. 48 million Africans. The buying power of these places, we have to figure out how to tap into it. Durban should lead the way. Durban should recognize that it can't solve its problems just within the city limits. And you shouldn't have to. You have a world to conquer. A world to conquer. whether it is your fashion, whether it is your manufacturing, whether it is your agriculture, there are trading partners that we need to be working with, and we in the U.S. need to do the same. My last point, two points. We have to use political power to create economic power. The purpose of political power is to create economic power. If you don't do that, then why did you even get the political power? So under those conditions, take the United States, take New York City. New York City has a budget of $120 billion US by itself. New York State has a budget of $237 billion by themselves. Their pension funds, approach the trillions of dollars. We have achieved a certain amount of political power in the US, which is why I'm the chair of banking and no other. Now, how do we move these pension funds to invest in places like Durban? We invest, New York invests in Israel. I'm not here to say whether it's good or bad. Ask me off stage. I am here to say that we do invest, and we do invest in other countries. We do not invest in Black Africa. This is a misuse of political power and something that we are here to help resolve, and I'm sure that there may be one or two people in the audience that want that resolved, especially the city managers of Durban.
Thank you so much, Shinitsa. I think that might be the first time I've heard the agreements and the treaties broken down into how can we practically move the flow of interest. I love the pension fund discussion. We have the same problem in South Africa. Nobody's richer than our pension funds, ladies and gentlemen, in this country alone. And we've recently made amendments to our Pension Fund Act to unlock their ability to invest in infrastructure specifically, to increase rather the ratio to which they can expose themselves to infrastructure development. So, Senator, already I have an invitation for you at this stage to say that if that is something you're interested in, you've arrived in the right country, whose amendments came into effect on the 28th of February last year, and where this type of partnership is exactly what, at that level, whatever the level is, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's at grassroots or it's at the level of a pension fund level, if we can find the shared interests that creates conducive infrastructure for our businesses to grow, then you're in the right location. So thank you for really practicalizing what it means for those treaties to be put into action, but also for defining for us who the Global South is. Because I think one of the conversations we've already been having when we talk about globalization to localization is that the Global South has an identity and a positioning challenge, sure, but also has been overlooked for so long, yet many others are very happy to extract and beneficiate from its many, many naturally given assets. So thank you for giving us that opening point. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just also quite cognizant of our time, and this is such a rich conversation that we are having here. And I really want to take us back, because earlier on I touched on who are we taking with us. Alexandra, you started really speaking about the importance of education and the standardization of the ideals that build a future as an economic driver. So many of us do not learn about our taxes, do not learn about personal financial literacy, let alone business financial literacy, until we're dealing with the taxman at our door taking the car, the house, and the dog too, right? So many of us are trying to avoid these 087 calls from the bank and these private numbers, right? Because nobody's taught us how to have the conversation with a financial service provider. So many of us don't know each other as neighbors on the African continent. If I asked members of our audience today, how many of you have traveled to more than 10 other African countries? I have. I've made it a point to. But who else has? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, sort of an average of 14, 15 hands with an audience this large. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a problem, a significant problem, because it means we're not sharing each other's attributes and assets and countries with one another. It means we're not trading. It means we don't know each other to trade with each other in the first place. It means we're not helping each other develop. It means the big African question is everybody's America on the African continent is South Africa, and everybody's big America in South Africa is to head off to the, to the United States or to Europe. Whereas we're hearing from Carol today, we're hearing from the senator today, that so much of the richness and the gold and the minerals and the commodities that make the rest of the world tick, we're leaving them here at home. So my question then to you, Alexandra, is how are we taking young people and their minds and their imaginations and their passports with? Because we do have a problem, and that's a significant challenge in terms of, do we even know each other to activate and unlock this economic potential we're seated on stage grappling with?
Okay, so thank you. You see, to fix some of these things, we must never, forever, wait for only governments or the public sector, because one of our problems, 99% of African governments, their fiscus or annual budget is not funded locally. It's funded through a big chunk of donations.
Grant funding.
Right. So the donors, they're the ones that are going to choose what then you must implement, by your budget. That includes even the African Union. That includes the African Union. It's the donors who ultimately choose what the African Union shall carry out, because they then choose what to fund and what not to fund. So with that situation being the case, we need to do, like, one of the things that have helped Western Europe after the Second World War was the collaboration of the diaspora of Europe with the continental citizens of Europe. There was a man called George C. Marshall.
Yes.
He was Secretary of State for the USA. And he was originally, his ancestry was European. So because the USA was an economic, huge economic beneficiary during the Second World War, the United States was not exactly a victim of the war. It was a trader, a leading trader, and a seller and merchant of equipment and hardware and technology in support of the Allies. So its economy grew instead of faltering. Then the man who was Secretary of State, which in Africa we call it Foreign Affairs or International Relations, he remembered the home of his ancestry, which was Western Europe. And he crafted what was then known as the European Economic Recovery Master Plan, which is now known as the Marshall Plan. This was a European in the diaspora, remembering his home continent and his home people. And back then, the first strategic allocation of resources was 15 billion US dollars, which in today's terms is over 120 billion US dollars, which was to be pumped into Western Europe to rebuild a continent within a short space of time, so as to heal the economic destruction, as well as to strategically position Western Europe so that amongst themselves, they'll never waste time fighting against each other again. That's how Germany, which was an instigator or a primary cause of that war, today you find the Germans, they work together with the French, they work together with the British, they work together with everybody, they go for tourism together, but they were arch enemies in the Second World War. But an economic solution crafted by a European diasporan who was holding an office of power there. I hope Senator is hearing me.
This story is for you, Senator.
Yeah. You see, you don't hold power uselessly. You don't hold power, then you forget your people. And I hope one day, even former presidents of the USA, including President Barack Obama, I hope he will one day hear my statement here. You see, we have a problem of Africans who hold power and they forget completely where they came from. And they only remember when they lose power. They only remember how to be useful when they are now powerless. That's when they set up this and that foundation and so forth, and they go with begging bowels now to look for some charitable funds to help. But when they were in control of the resources, they did nothing. George C. Marshall did not do that. He used the political and economic power that he was holding at that time to change strategically all of Western Europe. And that's how today, if you go to most countries of Western Europe, you just need one visa, the Schengen visa. It takes you to 13 countries. And a guy who is in Switzerland actually chooses where to go and buy certain aspects of their grocery, because there are certain things that are cheaper in neighboring Germany, and others are cheaper in France, and others are cheaper where they are there. And the guy does not need a passport or any border control to go to France or to go to Germany. So he buys grocery in the morning, he's in Switzerland, in the afternoon, he's in Germany, in the evening, he's in France, and then he comes to have his supper and sleep back in Zurich, Switzerland. Life has been made easier at that strategic level. So this is very crucial. When you are talking about the youth and so forth and so on, now there are certain things that cannot be solved by people that are in a refugee camp.
No.
Most African youths are in a huge refugee camp. And there is a limit to what they can solve there. That's why we need serious strategic leadership in the continent, as well as in the diaspora, to work together and to be able to say, we are going to put together funds. And these funds, they are going to work on a strategic project. And the first project is to foster collaboration, which is unlimited. And that collaboration should then be able to translate into sectors now.
Yes.
So trade is just one. Now, I don't want you to forget about the AGOA.
AGOA, yes.
AGOA means African Global
Well,
Opportunities Act. So it's an act which was enacted in the USA from a position of sympathy for Africa to say, you know, guys, Africa can't trade. Africa is locked out of global trade and so forth. And not every country in Africa is even having access to that AGOA.
Yes, not everybody is a participant.
Yes, it's a few.
Yeah.
And Africa does not have a say about who has access even to that, trading opportunity.
Yes.
Which is basically a charitable medium. Like, why should we be, the issues of trade, why should be those issues left to mercy, charity, and compassion? Why don't we define our goods, our resources, and our competitive advantages on the continent here, and then do it in such a way that you know very much how every country in the world, they need, whether it is cocoa,
Yes.
whether it is coffee, whether it is
It is platinum, it's titanium,
platinum.
the wars we're
Because we are the
fighting.
leaders, world leaders in more than 200 primary resources
Yeah.
that are produced on the continent. So we need to start to have time to define our net and gross worth as well as our potential, and then work on value addition. And a big chunk of the trade is not possible without industrialization. Because if it is trade without industrialization, then we are just simply auctioning primary raw materials.
Yeah.
And those primary raw materials, when they go out, they create employment outside, and they are then sold back here as finished products. And we buy them at the cost of our feet and our legs and our arms. But these things originally came from our villages.
Yep.
But we did not process, we did not manufacture. So these are real issues of strategy and discussion that we need to handle here.
And I think what you've done for us, Alex, is really come full circle to Carol's opening point. We're the continent of blood diamonds. You know, a war in Africa erupts, and a De Beers and Antwerp in Belgium benefits. We're the continent right now of refugee camps and displaced, 3 million displaced persons in the Congo, all because each one of us needs to carry one of these and the latest edition of one every time. And the titanium and the platinum and the raw material that goes into the production of them is what causes the conflict in there, and Apple elsewhere benefits. And it goes back to how do we close that loop so that we stop the bleeding, we start the healing, and then we emancipate one another. And I think just given the context of where we are in terms of time, I'm going to give Carol an opportunity to respond to your point. And then, Senator, I'm going to give you our last word on what you see us capitalizing on as part of this conference, and what you hope we all leave with as something to go think about, something to work on and build on, because we do need to move, from captive to capital conversations, I think, and that's what's come out of this.
I can't think of a better line, because we are not captive, we're choosing to remain captive. I think what for me comes out of what the senator is, what the minister is saying, which I think is absolutely crucial, is to begin to look at what our solutions are. I think we've spoken ad nauseum about the challenges, and we know where they emanate from. The
Yes.
biggest thing for me, where he leads us to, is a place where we begin to say, what are the things that are holding back? How are we led in such a way that we don't arrive at the solutions? I'll give you an example. For South Africa, we're the biggest platinum producer in the world. And we had a period where we were holding back in order to negotiate our bargaining power around this platinum, because we're providing the platinum that was giving the world catalytic converters and of course, jewels. What then happened is that because we were not organized together with the continent, the world found a different solution. They are now doing their catalytic converters without us. We are no longer in the equation because we did not create the infrastructure that allowed us to lead. If you look at oil, you could never close the Middle East outside of the OPEC conversation.
No.
You could never do that because the conversation does not take place without them. And I think that the moment Africa begins to say that we are endowed with these minerals, we are endowed with the workforce of the future, the youngest people in the world are here. It's our children. What are we doing to prepare them for a world that is going to allow them to lead? Do we want them holding the begging bowls that we've been carrying for so many years, that we've inherited from leaders who show us how to carry a begging bowl, and then we discover when they retire that they have homes in Switzerland, that they have, the overlooking Lake Geneva. They go to hospitals around the world and not on the continent. We have to lead with our children in mind. We have to lead in a manner that has African pride, and dare I say, I am not being racist, but black pride. Our blackness seems to be something of shame. I was embarrassed to hear the city manager open here, and before answering a question, having to say, it is not racist of us to try and seek solutions that affirm Africanness. We shouldn't be ashamed to do that. When Jewish people have a conversation about the Holocaust, they don't say, oh, excuse me, but I may want to love my people for a second. They don't do that. We have to be able to talk about what is going to take us out of bondage without seeking permission from anyone else. I was in the US speaking at a conference, and one of our speakers was attacked for talking about Black Lives Mattering. And the counter to that was all lives matter. Of course, all lives matter. That's why we're saying, look at black ones too. So in terms of changing the world economic infrastructure, African people are going to have to innovate with other African people. We want African Americans here to offer solutions. You are leading in the banking trade. We want those dollars, not to keep them for us, but to work together as Africans and create solutions that make you proud when you come here. We don't want you visiting shelters. We don't want you visiting shacks when you come to our continent. We want you to come and meet us as equals, because we are equal. We are capable, and we've shown it more than 1,000,000 times. I've forgotten about my notes, but if I leave you with anything today, is please let us be proud to be who we are. Please let us stop sabotaging one another as Africans. We create beautiful, beautiful solutions for the world. Let's do it for our benefit.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that affirming notes, Carol. If we're gonna have a branding and an identity problem, let's start with ourselves. I'm black. I'm proud of that. This is the skin I'm in. Senator, my final question to you. How do we move from captive to capital? Because that's what we're here for. We want to engage as equals. We want to be able to share money. We don't want to invite you to leave your dollars here. I want you to invite me to leave my rands there too. And I want to leave my products with you. I want you to engage the diaspora on our behalf to say, hey, what's our Marshall Plan in 2024? Because I have absolutely no doubt we don't lack the knowledge, we don't lack the social and the intellectual capital to pull it together, but without will, whether it is political will, it is the will of us as citizens, participating citizens, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot take this conversation forward. It also happens to be the 1 year, 2024, when the most citizens of the world will go to the polls to decide. This year, the most number of people globally have elections. The biggest nations of the world, ourselves included, the United States of America is coming up next, and so many others, right the way through to December. The most number of people in the world go to the polls to decide. And when we decide, ladies and gentlemen, we don't decide for poverty. We don't decide for inequality. We don't decide for broken services and infrastructure. We don't decide for an unequal, shaky future. We decide for prosperity. We decide for economic growth. We decide that we have livelihoods. And we decide that we can leave something, Moss, to our children, to our grandchildren. Senator, from captives to capital.
Well, I will start with the more hands-on things, and then I will go into things we need to work on. In my district, in my personal district, I have the biggest grossing casino in the world, and the owners are the Genting Corporation, and if you are interested if the city is interested in being in touch with them, I can certainly put them in touch with you. To the matter at hand, I am reminded that our Bible teaches us, without a vision, a people perish. Without a vision, a people perish.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that we have been operating without a vision for too long. And therefore, we have to come up with what is an approach. How do we research? How do we use the acts that we have created? How do we do all of these things? One of the things that we will have to do on both sides of the Atlantic is that we will have to really look at our house. We cannot move forward if we do not have clean hands.
Yes.
We will have to figure how to stop corruption. There's no sense in raising wealth if it is diverted. We should not judge how well we are with how well heeled some are, how well fed some are. We must use some new metrics. How many people are in school? How many people have jobs? How many people are fed? How many people have working on their visions? We simply cannot move forward using the old ways. We also need to look at the worldwide issue of reparations.
Yes.
We are too far behind. The wealth has been taken too much. You will not catch up. Start talking like that.
If you can.
Go out on you. When you start having that conversation, the mic will go out on you. I thought that was only in the U.S. We need to talk of reparations, and this talk needs to go into something much further. We are really well on the way in New York State. I know because it is my bill that we are doing. If we can get one government somewhere to do this, this creates a precedent for any other government and every other government. So the worldwide struggle for reparations is one that we need to take seriously if we are to compete in the 22nd century. Yes, I know I said the 22nd century. But the answer is a simple one, my friends, and it was given by Kwame Nkrumah long ago. And he taught you, Africa must unite. We don't have a choice. We mentioned jokingly that the U.S. is about to go through a very serious election. And tongue-in-cheek, I say, if it goes wrong, I may need to come here. If it goes really wrong, I may need to be here.
Sure.
Well, but let's look at that from a positive sense. Imagine if South Africa had said that we will give dual citizenship if you have something to bring to this country. If you are a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you are whatever, you can. If you're coming to build and to do a dual citizenship, you will move yourself forward. Imagine for a second the contracts that Durban were letting. It looked at the African Americans first and said, if you trade with us cheaper than the others, better than the others, then we will give you the contract. This will aid you and us. Go a step further. My last point. We have to be able to advocate for each other. There are issues that South Africa should not stand on its own about. It needs some advocates. In the U.S., we African Americans have reached a very unique place in the U.S. No one saw this coming. It's not that it was wanted. It came out of struggle. Struggle that we understand the struggles of South Africa. And we applaud the struggles, and we applaud the struggles that are ongoing, and wish you well in getting to where you need to be. So under those conditions, we all need to understand each other better, to aid one another. I say this, years ago, people used to laugh at Chinese, used to laugh. And a product from China was not as good as other places. It was laughed at. China has done such things that no one laughs at the Chinese anymore.
Yep.
And China is strong enough that you do not mess with Chinese people anywhere in the world, because China will look in on what is going on. Imagine if it's in my interest to make sure that Africa is very strong. I sit in a very unique place. My history is one where I'd better really watch myself at all times. I need Africa to be strong because I need a bigger brother. I need a strong Africa because that means that it makes me stronger. The stronger I am, the stronger I can fight for Africa. We all need to do those things. We need to start with a new vision, a vision that understands that being pitted against one another does not serve our purposes well, but serves other people's purposes well. A new vision, perhaps those younger leaders that you spoke of, who understand that the people's money is sacred and should not be spent in Europe and should not be spent on frivolous, stupid things that don't have value while our people starve. I look forward to working with you. This is why I'm here. I thank the pastor for bringing us. We are here to see who's ready so that we can do work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as the city manager makes his way to the stage, please, we have a small token of appreciation for our guests, CM. Please, can you give a really warm round of applause to this fantastic panel of guests? I would like to just, on behalf of the host city, eThekwini, thank you, the three of you, for really moving us from why to what, but also moving us now to what part do I play, whether you're in the policy space, the business space, and just the space as individuals in terms of what we think of ourselves and what we need to start thinking about saying, doing, and being at boardroom tables and at our dining room tables, for that matter. I think you brought it home to all of us what this conference and what Resurgence feels like, moves like, and perhaps most importantly, is going to catalyze what we do and its meaning for future generations, but also, and perhaps most importantly and urgently, even this generation, the generation that we currently sit in, that has so many challenges, but whose potential and opportunities are blocked by things that will can undo. City Manager, over to you.
Thank you very much. I've got 3 small tokens of appreciation for our speakers. Thank you very much for an insightful engagement. I'll start with you, Senator, and hand it over to you. Thank you. Ms. Carol Bauer. My Honorable Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If my guests can make their way off the stage, we still have one more speaker, and he's been waiting very patiently in the wings for us and this conversation to come to an end. But thank you very much to the 3 of you again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we receive just our closing remarks, and I'm able to throw forward to you in terms of what's happening on day 2. Day 2 is going to be really exciting. I'd like to welcome to the stage our final speaker of the day, Mr. Ian Jackson. Mr. Jackson is an experienced and accomplished professional, interestingly enough, in a space we spoke about that we don't often associate with the economy and the economics of the world, but is crucial and is fundamental and foundational to it, education. And he has a passion and, of course, a career that has been laced with much quality, high standards, and excellence. He's been in the classroom for 40 years. Mr. Jackson, I've been alive for 40 years. So I have absolutely no doubt that the diverse experiences that you've gathered as an educator, as a speaker, as an authority in the peak performance coaching space is something that our audience this afternoon will benefit from taking home with them before we throw forward and tell them about tomorrow. Please, a very warm welcome to Mr. Ian Jackson to the stage.
Thank you very much for your kind words of introduction. Good evening, everyone. The senator said that he believes in dual citizenship, an advocate for dual citizenship. And that's great, because just a few days ago I said to Reverend Dillon, how do I become a citizen of South Africa? He said, oh, there are many ways. And one easy way is for you to get married to a South African. But I'm already married. There went my dream and aspiration. But I've enjoyed every moment of my stay over the last 3 or 4 days. The only part that I found rather disturbing was the 14 hours and 43 minutes flight from Newark in New Jersey. I tried to sleep on the plane, but I could not sleep because I'm afraid of flying. So I need to be wide awake, just in case something happens. I pause for an applause. Throughout my life, I've always had a bucket list, and I'm sure that some of you down there, you also have a bucket list. Those things that you would like to accomplish before you go 6 feet under. And coming to Mother Africa is on my bucket list. And so what you're seeing right now is an emotional experience for me. Let me go a little bit further. Last night when I saw the Zulu dancers, I was saying to a brother today, I felt a teardrop. I felt a teardrop rolling down my cheek because I said to myself, this is my space. This is where I belong. This is my culture. I was taken from this land. I wouldn't say my forefathers. I was taken from this land brutally and transported across the Atlantic Ocean to a new home. So as I have this dialogue with you, this is not a presentation. I'm having a dialogue with my brothers and sisters. Thank you. That clock is saying 10 minutes already? I've never spoken for 15 minutes in my entire life, and I think I see 10 minutes on the timer. All those in favor for an extended 10 minutes for me, raise your hand and say aye. It's approved and carried. Those opposed by the same sign. No opposition. Thank you. For 51 years, I've been associated with the Reverend Dennis Dillon. We went to the same high school. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. We have been in the trenches, but I'm also happy to say that we have been to the mountaintop. Thank you. In every dispensation of planet Earth, we have always had a man to lead us, to teach us, and to guide us. At one point, it was Moses. At one point, it was Joshua. At one point, it was the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. At one point, it was Malcolm X. At one point, it was the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King. At one point, It was the Honorable Nelson Mandela. I am bold enough to say to this conference that the man at the fore at this time, at this dispensation, is Reverend A. Dillon, Dennis A. Dillon. Stand for me and let us give him a standing ovation. Let us give him a standing ovation. Now, before I continue, just one slight correction. If you should look at the program, you might see Ian Jackson, motivational speaker, USA. Just a slight correction. It ought to be Ian Jackson, motivational speaker, Jamaica. I pause for another applause. So let's get down to business. 18 minutes. My Lord have mercy. 18 minutes. So, my brothers and sisters, we are here today to rise to the occasion, and I would like to use the acronym. They say in the English language, when you take the initial consonant, when you take the initial letter from several words, and those initial letters, when you put them together and they form a new word, in English we call it an acronym. Say after me, acronym. Say after me with some conviction, acronym. My acronym is RISE. R-I-S-E. And if we get this acronym, if we act out what it means to me, and I hope that you will take it as your own personally, this race, the black race, will be transformed. The R, resilience. That is to say, to come back from defeat, to come back from discouragement, to come back after we have been through hell. Repeat after me, please. Repeat after me. A setback. A setback is a setup for a comeback. That was the warm-up exercise. This time around, it's the real McCoy. A setback is a setup for a comeback. That's the R. I can. The I can. We ought not to believe at any point along the continuum that we are unable to execute that which we need to attain. The R, resilience, the I can, and the S stands for self-discipline. Doing what we have to do, the ability to push forward and to stay motivated and to take action regardless of how we feel physically or emotionally. So we have dealt with the R, which stands for? We have dealt with the R, and it stands for? You see, what you have to understand, I am a teacher by profession. And if you want to get a tick each time in your book, you have to respond. The R stands for? The I stands for? Good. The S stands for? discipline. And the E stands for education. I see some people writing, so that's good. At the end of this exercise, bring your notes to me so I can tick. For us to rise, for us to attain all the things that we have discussed today, we must practice to rise. And as we rise, we also need to move forward, to be progressive. But let me say this. Some people, when they attempt to move forward, when they attempt to advance, some people confuse movement and progress. Let me say that again. Some people, in an attempt to move forward, they confuse movement and progress. Let us clear up that right now. Repeat after me. Repeat after me. Many people confuse movement and progress. A rocking chair moves. Repeat after me. Let's go. Many people confuse movement and progress. A rocking chair moves, but there's no progress. So as black people, as we advance for a collective cause, let us not confuse movement and progress, because a rocking chair moves, but there's no progress. Thank you. I'm wrapping up now. As I said before, I've never spoken for 15 minutes in my entire life. So I'm really trying my best to contain myself. I'm going to close now. When Dr. Fidel Castro, the Cuban, when he executed the Cuban Revolution, overthrow the Batista regime, some years after, he said this, and I quote, "I executed the revolution using 85 men. But if I had the chance to do it again, I would use 10 or 15 men. Because," and this is the part that hit me like a sledgehammer when I read it, because all it takes is faith and a plan of action. Repeat after me. All it takes is faith and a plan of action. Black people, we have to rise. We have to rise. Because all it takes is to have faith and a plan of action. I thank you very much. I thank you. I'm done. And I go back to center stage simply to tell you, I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Based on passion approved. Thank you so much, Mr. Ian Jackson, for energizing us at last moments of surge. before the afternoon ends. Oh, thank you very much. This is for you, sir, but I'll make sure I come down and present it, and very correctly, to the representative of the people of Jamaica. Yes, I'll make my way down. Ladies and gentlemen, please may I call to the stage at this point in time, just to give us our closing remarks, Councillor Tembobuhle Nduli, who is our chairperson of the ECOD committee at eThekwini Municipality. Oh, okay. The man said he ain't leaving without what's for him, right? And this is yours, sir. Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm 64 years of age and I've worked so hard for this Grammy Award. So first I would like to thank God. And I would like to thank my producer. And I would like to thank my director. And all the members of my band. And this is not for me. It's for us. Thank you, my fans. I thank you.
That's normally when the music starts playing at the Grammys. But ladies and gentlemen, please can you give a very warm welcome to the stage to Usompisi, who is the chairperson of ECOD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I'm sure, Bob Mayor, today you can see Uguti. I've tried to be orderly. Yesterday, I was wearing in a bad state. Even earlier on when I arrived, I was thinking about you, hey, you'll chase me out. Thank you very much. Before one gets into the closing remarks, there are just two things that one want to reflect on. The first one, can you all clap your hands for the delegation that came to our city on what they've done on the Mandela program? If I can tell you the secret on what had happened, we're not too sure when we were starting what is the exact number, Honorable Mayor, that we wanted to achieve there. But I can tell you and assure you, they've been standing there asking for children to come. You know what happened? 67 children. As from today going forward, they are going to get support from those that were part of that program. It is in the same number with the 67 minutes that we are spending. It means that each minute has what? A child. Thank you very much. The second one, which I just want to reflect on before I get into a speech. When I went to New York, the first time when I met Reverend, having a conversation on this topic that we have today, he reminded me, Bob Mayor, the years between 2009 to 2012. When I was the chairperson of the Youth League, the League of the ANC, where were the police that he wanted to put in the conference of the ANC to say economic freedom in our lifetime? That topic was a topic that was driven by the youth, and I was a youth by that time. Now, when I see that conversation that we had when we were in New York, I saw that our dream will come true when we use this vehicle. That's why I said that I'm into this vehicle. I just want to raise that before one continues. Thank you very much. Program Director, Ms. Lynette Ntuli, Honorable Mayor, Councillor Silly Traba, and all other councillors present. City Manager, Mr. Mpele, and all the officials present from the municipality. Founder and the convener of the Resurgence Conference, and the CEO, publisher of the New York Christian Times, Reverend Dennis De Leon. I'm no longer calling you DD now. African Global Network Chairperson, Mr. Wiseman Mkhize. The Republic of Zambia, former Vice President, Dr. Nevas Mumba. New York State Senator, James Sanders Jr. World Economic Congress President, Dr. Alexandra Chisago, Black Lives Matter co-creator of IO. Ekakasini FM Managing Director, Minenhle Dlamini. All delegates visited from abroad, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, sanibonani and good evening. As we conclude this enlightening program, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for participating and valuable contribution to our dignitary, led by the Mayor of eThekwini, Babu Tlaba, and the international delegation. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and the support. We wish to express our sincere appreciation to Reverend Leon, the Resurgence convener and the publisher of a New York Christian Times. Your vision has been a driving force behind our collaboration. To our program facilitator, Mambele Sombis, thank you for guiding us smoothly through this packed program. To our speakers and panelists, thank you for sharing your expertise and insight on innovation, economic integration, setting the tone for the conference on the upcoming activities. Your wisdom is motivating us to strive for excellence. To our audience, thank you for engagement and interest through the program. Moving forward, let us continue to build on the momentum to create together this proceeding. Let us work together to harness innovation, promote economic integration, ensure that Africa economies are fully integrated into global market. May you continue to build connection, foster innovation, and promote equitable economic growth. I just want to take 3 quotes from Babu Mandela before I close. Remember that hope is powerful. It's a powerful weapon, even all is lost. The second one, it after climbing a mountain, one finds that there are so many hills to climb. Then the last one to the youth, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Lastly, please make time to visit our stand on the local businesses which are showcasing on the other side of the venue. They are in good quality that they are displaying. Please buy and support locally. Thanks once again, and I wish you all a fulfilled and a productive journey ahead. I thank you. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
I was trying to avoid to come back on stage because it's just a few announcements. But I generally avoid the lectern because, as everybody can see, I'm the size of the lectern. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings the end to day one of the Resurgence Conference. On your way out, please just note that there are parking tickets available for you to exchange for the original token that you received when you came in. Tomorrow's program starts at 9 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, we have a packed day. We have a number of keynote speeches, we have a number of panel sessions, as well as parallel breakaway sessions that you would have seen in the program that has been presented to you. And I'll tell you, of course, where all the different venues are. But first in the morning, we will gather in this venue to kick off our keynote speeches as well as our panel discussions, which will really now be unpacking a lot more in detail what you heard in this afternoon's panel discussion and the so much more that we promised and that we've heard different participants in the business community, civic society, and so many different institutions cry out for about investment and about economic activity in eThekwini. We've heard you, and we've tried to make sure that we've inculcated both the leaders and knowledge as well as the actual topics into this program. So you have to be here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We have a long day. It is a Friday, but I know you will be here until this time again because it is really going to be worth your while. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you return with your lanyards and your name tags. Again, you will need those to enter the different venues, to enter the ICC halls, the lunch venues, as well as the exhibition. So please do not lose those. If you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen, please also contact the registration desk where you registered when you arrived. The team and the staff there will again be available tomorrow to assist you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some items of lost and found, so if you have lost anything, please go to the registration desk and they'll be able to help you there as well. But there is one specific item that I am going to announce because it hasn't been handed in, and the owner of that particular diary and document is quite urgently seeking it. There is a diary and a bunch of documents. It appears to be a contract. It has a Transnet logo, I believe, on it that has been misplaced by the gentleman. I know he's at the back at the moment near the tech desk right now. If anyone, ladies and gentlemen, happen to pick that document up, whether it's any of your seats at an expo area or anywhere else, or has seen it, please can you hand it in for us on your way out at the reception or the registration desk, as we cannot find that particular item, and he does say that there are some important documents that he needs in that particular folder and diary as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please drive home safely, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow for day 2 of the conference. Nisale kahle.